Here are two articles I printed out. Courtier's reply on the Rational Wiki website and Courtier's reply on the Wikipedia website. I'll go ahead and read the Wikipedia one first. The Courtier's reply is a type of logical fallacy, specifically an ad hominem, meaning a personal attack, in which a respondent to criticism dismisses the arguments of the critic by claiming that the critic lacks sufficient knowledge, credentials, or training to credibly comment on the subject matter. Additionally, a Courtier's reply will refer either explicitly or implicitly to authorities that the respondent considers to have the requisite expertise and body of work in the subject matter, whose work the respondent claims the critic failed to address. It may be considered a form of argument from authority. Basically, what this came from was, usage history. I'll read this for you. American professor of biology P.Z. Myers coined the term Courtier's reply in a December 2006 entry on his blog Feneringla. I think that's how you pronounce it. Myers was reacting to some of the criticism leveled at the 2006 book The God Delusion, in which author Richard Dawkins argues against the existence of a supernatural creator. Critics argued that Dawkins' lack of qualifications in philosophy or theology called into question a number of his arguments. Myers responded to this criticism by making an analogy, comparing Dawkins to the boy at the end of the fable The Emperor's New Clothes, who is the only reasonable voice that recognizes the emperor's naked. So basically, Courtier's reply, in its original sense, was applied to somebody who studied theology, and then they're claiming that God exists, and then the idea that they could just talk down to people and say, well, you don't have the credentials to comment on God because you're not a theology PhD or whatnot. And on the other hand, Dawkins was like, the God delusion, no, God's a fantasy and it's a bunch of nonsense. So he was commenting to the theologists saying, well, I don't have to be a PhD to criticize you. I can understand these arguments very well without a degree in philosophy or theology. So basically, the Courtier's reply is, it boils down to, but you haven't read enough on it to understand what we're talking about. And lo and behold, what happens here is that this type of Courtier's reply is, it's used to conflict religion, science versus religion, and I don't think it's as simple as that. Courtier's reply is also used by people with scientific degrees criticizing other people with scientific degrees. Oh, you don't have the expertise to comment on this. That's what they do all the time. When I was at Florida State, I took physics. When I was at University of Central Florida, I took biology, anatomy and physiology, chemistry, and I also took, statistics, calculus. I took all the math courses that I needed to do. I don't have a degree in physics, but I understand physics and chemistry and biology. Thermodynamics, I understand all of that. So when I see a problem inside of mainstream science, what happens is that I get ridiculed as being not expertise enough. I didn't read enough on the literature to understand what's going on here. You don't have to have a PhD to criticize these people and to find their flaws. It's easy to do. All you need is a basic education in physics or chemistry. It's right out in the open. So Courtier's reply also applies to all those scientists out there that ridicule the supposed armchair physicists or the cranks and crackpots that can point out problems with their models and their ideas. But it has nothing to do with being valid or accurate in response to the critics. It has everything to do with they like to keep their little groups, their little cliques, their clubs and their societies where they pump these kids through school and mold them into becoming a part of a scientific society. And that's not the future of science. The future of science is getting to the bottom of it and figuring out how nature works. It's not about forming cliques and groups, clubs, in societies where everybody thinks the same way. If anything, that's what we want to avoid, because what that does is it gives those people in those groups a sort of nearsightedness. They can't see beyond their face. They can't see what's right in front of them because they're so much of an expert inside one little tiny little thing that they fail to see the big picture, and that's not the future at all. And I think Courtier's reply really lays it on the line, and it's surprising that they only use it for arguing against religion, when this is a very powerful fallacy that all scientists do all the time. You just gotta find out when they do it. You gotta learn how to see through their bullshit, in other words, because there's a lot of it out there. Today, September 17th, 2016.